From Yoda being a monkey to some bizarre early screenplays. Join us as we take a look at 9 things you didn't know about Star Wars memorabilia.
Nobody was prepared for the incredible success of Star Wars in 1977, least of all the toy manufacturer Kenner. They had won the contract to make action figures based on the characters, but had no idea how popular they would be. To be fair to Kenner, nobody else did either, and they were only granted the license a month before the film was released, giving them little time to prepare. By Christmas of 1977, an entire generation of kids was screaming for Star Wars toys, but despite Kenner's best efforts, none had hit the toy store shelves. So on Christmas morning, excited children around the world awoke to find a Star Wars early bird certificate package under the tree. Instead of toys, the package featured a certificate that could be redeemed for 4 action figures as soon as they were ready. It also included a diorama display stand showing the 12 figures in the range, some stickers, and a membership card for the Star Wars fan club. Essentially, Santa brought them an IOU with pictures of the toys they couldn't have yet. Merry Christmas, kids. Today, these original early bird packages are popular with Star Wars toy collectors and in good condition can sell for hundreds of dollars. During pre-production on The Empire Strikes Back, George Lucas was worried that animatronic technology wasn't up to the task of making Yoda realistic. So, in desperation, he came up with a frankly insane suggestion. Let's dress a monkey up. According to J.W. Rinzler's excellent 2010 book, The Making of Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back, the crew attempted to use a monkey carrying a cane and wearing a Yoda mask to play the role, and judging by the photograph that emerged, it would have looked absolutely terrifying. Thankfully, the majority of the film's British crew had previously worked on Stanley Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey and knew a thing or two about primates. They convinced Lucas that the monkey would just keep taking the mask off, which it inevitably did, and the director wisely took their advice to scrap the idea. Instead, he enlisted the help of Jim Henson, who worked with designer Stuart Freeborn to create the world's first animatronic Muppet. Played by the renowned puppeteer Frank Oz, Yoda became an eccentric and lovable Jedi Master known for dispensing sage advice rather than flinging his own excrement around. Freeborn's original production castings and conceptual artwork for the Yoda puppets sold at Profiles in History in 2005 for $27,500 and The Empire Strikes Back cane used by Yoda and possibly the monkey as well sold during the same auction for a whopping $42,500. As with almost every movie, the original Star Wars screenplay was different to the finished product, but you've got no idea how different it could have been. Can you imagine a version of Star Wars in which the main character's name is Luke Starkiller, Han Solo is a bearded cabin boy on Jabba the Hutt's pirate spaceship, and Chewbacca is an 8-foot grey bush baby monkey with baboon-like fangs? R2-D2 is a foul-mouthed robot that speaks English, and C-3PO talks like a sleazy used car salesman. The dark side of the Force is known as the Bogan. Upon rescuing Princess Leia from her prison cell, she begins to complain and Han Solo punches her in the face to shut her up. Darth Vader is human, doesn't show up in the film for 2 hours, then gets killed by Han Solo. C-3PO fires the shot that destroys the Death Star. All these aspects were in early versions of Lucas's screenplays, copies of which have cropped up at auction in recent years in various forms. Most recently, a copy of the 1975 second draft entitled Adventures of the Starkiller sold at Julien's in 2014 for just over $8,000. Alec Guinness was never shy with his feelings about Star Wars. He thought the whole thing was ridiculous. In letters published in his official biography, he described the film as fairy tale rubbish, but admitted he was happy with the money, if not the script. New rubbish dialogue reaches me every other day on wadges of pink paper, and none of it makes my character clear or even bearable. I just think, thankfully, of the lovely bread, which will help me keep going until next April. That lovely bread would keep him going a lot further than the following April. Despite his reservations, Guinness was one of the few actors who believed the film would be a hit and negotiated his fee accordingly. His contract stated he would receive just over 2% of the film's total profits, and his optimism paid off handsomely. By the time of his death in 2000, it is estimated that Guinness had earned more than $95 million in continuing royalties. Not only did he strike it rich, but he managed to do it by sneaking out early. According to Guinness, he suggested to Lucas that his character be killed off in the first film to give him more gravitas, but he had an ulterior motive. In a 1999 interview, he admitted, "What I didn't tell Lucas was that I just couldn't go on speaking those bloody awful banal lines. I had enough of the mumbo jumbo." And so Obi-Wan Kenobi went from a classically trained English actor to an empty brown robe on the floor of the Death Star. An empty brown robe that, when it hit the auction block at Bonhams in 2007, sold for a whopping $104,000 US. The Empire Strikes Back features one of the most famous non-speaking anonymous extras in movie history, and although he's only on screen for a couple of seconds, the world's wonderfully obsessive Star Wars fans took him to their hearts. He appears during the scene in which Cloud City is evacuated as part of a fleeing crowd, but one thing that made him stand out from the rest was that he was clearly carrying an ice cream maker as he ran away. At first he was simply known as Ice Cream Maker Guy and celebrated for the fact that even as the Empire invaded the city, his love of ice cream was never faltered. But then online fans gave him a real name, Wilro Hood. According to his fictional but now canonical biography, Hood was an employee of Aerofilter, a company that sold discounted gas to the rebellion to aid their fight against the Empire. When Cloud City was invaded, Hood sought to protect these secret dealings by grabbing the unusually shaped computer core containing the information. So Hood wasn't actually an intergalactic ice cream vendor, he was actually a loyal company man and a hero for the rebellion. The strange cult of Wilro Hood grew to the point that he was granted the ultimate honour. He was turned into a limited edition action figure. To this day, nobody knows the actor that played Wilro Hood, or Fleeing Man as it probably said on his call sheet. But his legend lives on in this rare toy, part of the Kenner Legacy Collection series released in 2009. Each of the Star Wars films begins with no opening credits. Instead, there's the famous crawl of letters telling you the story to date, usually followed by a series of enormous spaceships blasting the hell out of each other. What you may not know is that George Lucas paid for these now iconic opening scenes. After the release of the first film in 1977, he was determined to repeat the style in the sequels by throwing viewers straight into the story. But the Directors Guild of America had other ideas. When The Empire Strikes Back was released in 1980, the DGA insisted that the director, Irvin Kershner's name, be listed at the start of the film instead of the end. And if the director's name was credited, it meant everyone else's had to be too, meaning an opening credits sequence that Lucas didn't want. Lucas refused, and the DGA countered with a threat of a $250,000 fine, along with remanding the removal of the film from cinemas until the issue was rectified, a delay which would have cost an extra $500,000. Lucas thought the guild had it in for him, and he did have a point. They previously had no problem with the style of credits for the first film, and Kershner himself stated he was happy to have his name listed at the end of the movie. So Lucas agreed to settle the fine for $25,000 and immediately resigned from the guild, along with the Writers Guild, who also fined him $15,000 for the same issue. The dispute then made it impossible for him to hire his first choice director for Return of the Jedi, Steven Spielberg. "I feel the unions tried to extort money from me for their own coffers. They used a thin technicality, but the only reason they were doing it was to get money," he later claimed. And 35 years on, he still refuses to rejoin the DGA on principle. So The Empire Strikes Back title crawl ended up costing Lucas a total of $40,000, and in 2011 it cost a collector exactly the same price as the original acetate printed with the immortal words, "It is a dark time for the rebellion," sold at a Profiles in History auction. Samuel L. Jackson didn't need to audition for his role as Mace Windu in The Phantom Menace. He just went on live TV and told Lucas to hire him. In December 1996, Samuel L. Jackson appeared on the British late-night talk show TFI Friday to promote his movie The Long Kiss Goodnight. Host Chris Evans jokingly asked Jackson about his dream role, and the actor answered with a direct message to Lucas. "Well, the film I'm chasing right now is the Star Wars prequel. I just want to get in a room with George Lucas and tell him I'm interested. I'd be Lando Calrissian's dad, Darth Vader's dad, Luke Skywalker's slave, anything. I don't know, I just want to tell George Lucas I'll do it if he wants me." Word soon reached Lucas, and the role of Mace Windu, the second most powerful Jedi in the galaxy and the only one allowed to have a purple lightsaber, was Jackson's. In 2013, Jackson also admitted his screen-used lightsaber from the film proudly sits in his home bearing the inscription, "Badass motherfucker." Another of Jackson's lightsabers from the films, a stunt version, was used during battle scenes in Attack of the Clones, and it sold at auction in 2007 for $35,000. Sadly, it doesn't share the same inscription. Everybody knows the original Star Wars posters: Luke, Leia, lightsabers, robots, Wookiees, scruffy looking Nerf herders, and Darth Vader's huge helmet. But artists in the Eastern Bloc saw the films a little differently if they'd seen them at all. As these posters from Russia, Hungary and Poland show, their versions of Star Wars may have been a little odder than the ones you remember. Who can forget the terrifying robot with a face like a puma and tiny lightsabers for hair, the cowboy and horse made from old computer panels, the scene where Darth Vader's head spectacularly explodes into 100 pieces, or the green alien lizard monster thing that seems to have wandered in from a different film altogether. Due to restrictions in communist countries, many films didn't hit cinemas until years after their original premieres. The first Star Wars film wasn't officially released in Russia until 1990. And when they were, the posters for the films were often abstract, surreal, or psychedelic interpretations created by designers with, ironically, a little more artistic freedom than their Western counterparts. These vintage foreign Star Wars posters are now highly sought after by collectors for their incredible artwork. Depending on the condition and rarity, they can sell for a few $100s up to around $4,000 at auction. The Ewoks should never have existed. That's a sentiment shared by a fairly large number of Star Wars fans, and also originally by George Lucas. His initial plan was to stage Return of the Jedi on Kashyyyk, Chewbacca's home planet, and have the Empire's stormtroopers go up against an army of Wookiees. But Lucas realised he'd written himself into a corner. If the Wookiees are such a primitive race living on the forest without technology, how is it that Chewie can fly a spaceship and operate pretty much any advanced weapon you hand him? So instead of using Wookiees, the Ewoks were born, and a generation of moviegoers either said "no" or "ugh." Lucas took the name from the Native American Miwok tribe indigenous to forests in Northern California where the Endor scenes were shot, but the term Ewok, interestingly, was never actually spoken throughout the film. It only appears in the closing credits. But perhaps the world's greatest Ewok fact is this: during the final scene of Return of the Jedi, during the Ewok celebration, they sing an incredibly catchy tune that can only be really titled Yub Nub. And both the melody and lyrics of that song were written by Joseph Williams, lead singer of the classic rock band Toto. He's also the son of legendary film composer John Williams, whose work you may have heard of. These days you'll struggle to get your hands on an Ewok. The original screen-worn masks and costumes rarely appear on the market, and when they do, they bring top prices. A baby Ewok puppet sold at Christie's in 2011 for $26,274, and a single screen-worn mask fetched $22,700 at Heritage in 2010.
Well, that's it for another episode. Thank you so much for watching. I want to give a huge shout out to our friends over at Just Collecting. They're an awesome memorabilia site that helped us out with this list. If you want to check them out, the link is in the description box below. And as always, that's it for me. I'll see you all next time. Peace!